All right, so welcome to our EM. Our message for today, our title for today is God is Our Victory from Exodus 17. Okay, so what book are we on right now? Okay, good, Exodus. Okay, so we are finally free from Egypt and now we're in the wilderness. Okay, and so begins our wilderness series, which is a really important series. So I want to start with today. So you know that saying, I think a lot of people say it with like sports or like when you take a test or something, but you know the saying like it's 90% mental or like 80% mental, whatever the number is. Like the idea is it's all in your head. So like I've heard like Olympic athletes talk about like, you know, when they're training, they could be totally physically fit and like their body can do it. But if their minds are not there, if they don't believe they can, if they don't have the right state of mind, they can't do what they've been training for like 4 years, okay? So that's the idea of today. It's like whatever's in your mind, whatever you think and believe in your mind will determine all of your life. And so if you don't think something is true in here, it won't happen out here, okay? So this is the concept that God wants to teach the Israelites today out of Exodus 17. So last week, what did the Israelites do? They were thirsty and hungry, and so they grumbled, they complained, okay? And so just 3 days after the Red Sea, after the craziness of that miracle, 3 days later, no water, nothing. And so they started to complain. And God did give them water. And what did he say when he gave them water? He said this. He said, this will be a test. Every time you face need, hunger, food, water, any of those things, whenever you face that need, this will be a test for me to see, do you really trust me? You guys know in the movie Aladdin, okay? Like, you know that like iconic thing that he does where he's like, do you trust me? You know, he always like reaches his hand out to Jasmine. He's like, do you trust me? And in the beginning, when she doesn't know who he is or he doesn't know who she is, he does that and she remembers that. And then later, you know, on that like balcony scene, he's like, do you trust me? And she's like, oh, it's Aladdin, right? Okay, it's the idea. Like God is reaching out to the Israelites saying, do you trust me? Do you trust me? And so this week in Exodus 17, we see two different stories, but with one common theme. God again provides water for the Israelites, and God also gives them victory over their enemies. But these two stories show one answer. And the answer is this, is that no matter what problems come in your life, whether it's thirst or the enemies like fighting for you, over you, like whatever it may be, the answer is always God. The solution is always God. Whether the battle is internal in your head, in your heart, or whether the battle is external, outside in your circumstances, God is our victory. And before you can fight the battle out here, you have to fight the battle in here. So let's look at Exodus 17, verse 1, where we see where Israelites are today. So the whole Israelite community set out. They're traveling from place to place as the Lord God commanded them. So they camped at Rephidim, but there was no water. Okay, this is really interesting because God's telling them, okay, go here, go here, go here. That sounds easy, but guys, this is like 1 million people camping out in the desert. Who's gone camping before? Like probably most of you have, living in Colorado. Camping is a lot of work, okay? There's a reason why I don't go until my kid can take care of everything by himself because it's so much work. Camping is so much work. Like setting up the tent, like all of those things, it's so much work. Can you imagine 1 million people setting up camp, breaking down camp, and traveling by foot? This is a big deal. So they are following God. They're going where God tells them to go. But where God told them to go, there's no water. It's like, what the heck? Like, God, I obeyed you. We followed you. We went where you told us to go, and you take us to a place with no water? See, here's the thing, is that sometimes we can obey God, but that doesn't mean that everything goes the way we think. Sometimes God allows thirst and things to happen, even when he's told us to go somewhere, because he has an important lesson to teach us. And he has one for the Israelites today. So look in verse 2. What happens next? So they quarreled. They fought with Moses and said, "Give us water to drink." Moses said, "Why do you fight with me? Why do you put the Lord to the test?" Now, remember, this is like deja vu, guys, right? Like, we have been here, done this before. Like, we've been thirsty before and we've complained before. How did that turn out? Like, this should look familiar to them. And every day, not only that, but God's been providing them with manna every single day. Every morning, he's giving them food. But what's the response? Instead of remembering how God provided for them in the past, they are quick to find someone to blame. See, the problem was not thirst. The deeper problem was that they did not trust that God was with them. So instead of coming face to face with their issues, they're trying to find someone else to blame. The same thing goes for us. Guys, when something bad happens to any of us, what do? If something bad happens to you, you're like, oh, you know what? Let me just pause right now and think about everything God's done for me. Yeah, God's been so good to me. Oh yeah, this situation really sucks, but you know what? God is so good. Is that our reaction most of the time? It should be, but it's not, right? Most of us, when something goes bad, what's your first reaction? Your gut reaction usually is to complain about the situation or to blame someone, find something wrong. Like, it's that person's fault, it's that person's fault. Because we do not like to deal with our own issues and our own issues of not trusting in God. Remember last week we talked about grumbling? How do we define grumbling? Grumbling is defined as the external expression of internal rebellion. So when we have internal issues going on, it first manifests through grumbling. That's the first place it comes out. You know when you have like a boiling pot of water, okay? And like you really want ramen, or like 12 at night, you want ramen. And like you put it on the stove. Jaden's like, I really want ramen at midnight, okay? So you put it on there and you're like really hungry and it just takes forever for the water to boil, you know? You're like, oh my God, it's taking forever. But once it starts boiling, it's boiling really fast, right? That's often what complaining does to us. Complaining is like a little bit of a boil, a little bit. It's just like boiling a little bit inside. It's getting a little warm. But before we know it, once we give voice to that grumbling, it grows and grows and grows and grows. So no longer are they just grumbling, they're fighting now with Moses. It gets so bad that Moses thinks that they're gonna kill him. They've all grabbed stones to like throw them at Moses. They're literally doing that right now. And so Moses is like, God, what do I do? And this is how God responds in verse 5 and verse 6. If you go to the next verse, you'll see this in verse 5. The Lord answered Moses, go out in front of the people and take in your hand the staff which you struck the Nile, and I will stand there before you by the rock, strike the rock, and water will come out of it. Okay, remember, this was not a thirst issue. This was actually an internal issue. He's saying, look, I know what you're really saying is that you don't trust that I'm with you. But I'm telling Moses right now, I will stand there on the rock with him, and when he strikes the rock, water will come out. Do you know someone in your life, they're your friend, and you can do like 99 good things for your friend, but you do one thing wrong, and that's the only thing they remember? Do you guys know people like that in your life? Okay, don't point to that person or that person's in this room. Okay, but the thing is, like, there are 99 things you could do right, but one thing they do wrong, and that's the one thing they can't get over. That's exactly what the Israelites are doing to God. They have conveniently forgotten the 99 things that God has done for them, and they're just fixed on this one problem in front of them. And so God told them, go in front of everybody, stand there, let them see what's going to happen. Take your staff. Remember, that staff is the same staff that released the 10 plagues of Egypt. God is saying, the staff that freed you from Egypt is the staff that will provide for you in the desert. One of the most important lessons that Israelites are going to learn in this season in the wilderness is that God is with them. God is with them. That wilderness is really important because think about it. They've just been freed from Egypt, right? They're free, everyone's happy, everything's good. But they haven't yet reached the promised land. They haven't reached their destination. And so the wilderness is that middle journey, that journey from when they're set free until they get home. If you look at our lives, it's the same thing. When you and I are set free by God in Jesus, that is the beginning. That's Egypt. Are we done though? Do we just die and go to heaven after that? No. We still have an end destination, but we still have this life to live. That is the wilderness for us. The wilderness is such an important season to learn some of the most important lessons about how to trust God and how God loves us. So this wilderness may seem really rocky and dry and annoying, but this is the place where God teaches his people how to trust him. So when you look at it, okay, he's telling him, strike the rock and water's going to come out. Like, why did God say to do that? Why couldn't God say, okay, do a rain dance? Like, lift your staff, like spin around and rain is going to fall from the sky. Or like, why did God say to bring water that way? All along, God was showing them a really important truth that they didn't even know at that time. Look at the situation, okay? These people are like, God, you're not fair. Like, you're not providing for us. Like, you're not here with us. Like, they're falsely accusing God. And God says, okay, I'll take that. I'll take that and I'll give you water. If you look at the next verse, 1 Corinthians 10, verse 4, it says this. So this is New Testament, okay? This is many years after this happened. Paul is writing to the church in Corinth, and he's saying this. The Israelites drink the same spiritual drink, for they drink from the spiritual rock that accompanied them, and that rock was Christ. And so Paul knew afterwards what Moses and the Israelites did not know. They just thought, ooh, yay, water, like gushing from this rock. What they didn't know was the symbolism, the imagery behind it. Think about it. God struck the rock. That rock was Christ. What did God do to Jesus? Like, what did he allow him to happen to him? That Jesus would get falsely accused, and that he would be struck on the cross, and by his life, all of us would have living water. And so that rock that Moses struck, it's a total picture for them of what it means to be saved. That you will be thirsty again, but when you drink of Christ, when you are saved in him, you will never thirst again. This imagery, this is really important. The lesson we are supposed to learn as Christians is the source of living water is always Jesus. The answer to your problem, always Jesus. God sometimes allows hard things to happen to us. God sometimes allows us to thirst to show us what we're truly thirsty for. And it's only God who can satisfy. If you look in verse 7, the next verse, it says this. So Moses called the place Massah and Meribah because the Israelites quarreled and because they tested the Lord, saying, is the Lord among us or not? So here we see a summary statement of the story. The issue was not thirst. The issue was that they were thinking, is God even here with us? Is God even here? Why would he bring us to a place with no water? Why would God not provide for us? Why would God let us die in the wilderness? That's what they were thinking. God is not with us. They're accusing him, God is not with us. And yet the greater issue that God was trying to show them was, yes, you're fighting, you're complaining, you're thirsty, but what's the root issue? You don't trust me. You don't trust me. And until you realize that, you won't fix that. That's why when we keep going in the wilderness series, you'll see there are many times that this happens where there's no water or no food and they start complaining. Because God is showing them, look, your issue is not about food. It's about your heart. Do you really trust me? So for these last 2 chapters, we've seen that Israelites been fighting internal battles about hunger and thirst inside, issues about trusting in God or not. So now in the second half of chapter 17, we're going to see how God is going to show them with an external battle how he cares for them. So right away in verse 8, we see that the Amalekites come out to fight them. So who are the Amalekites? Okay, if you go way back in Genesis, remember, who are the twin brothers that fought all the time? Jacob and Esau. Out of Jacob came all of Israel, and out of Esau came, one of the tribes was the Amalekites. Okay, so the Amalekites and the Israelites are like long lost family. There's a connection there. But the Amalekites, they've come out to fight against Israel. And in Deuteronomy, we see that like they came out and they fought nasty. So they didn't fight like, we're here to fight you. What they did was they snuck up behind the Israelites in the back. Because in the back, who's usually struggling in the back? It's like the children, like the old people, the people who are sick, the people who are like very defenseless. They're the ones they attacked first. So the Amalekites like snuck attack behind them, and that's how they fought with them. And so Moses is like, that's not okay. God said, send Joshua, go and fight the enemy. But I want you, Moses, to go to the mountain. And every time you hold your hands up in the air, they will win. The Israelites will win. But every time your hands go down, they will be losing. And so they're going out and they're actually fighting the battle, but then Moses is up there holding his hands up. And in Israelites, when they say hold your hands up, that means to pray. Okay, so Moses is praying above, seeing the battle happen. And every time he's praying, like they're winning. Every time his hands start to fall, they start to lose. How many of you growing up, I don't know, maybe like, I'm kind of old school about this, but when I was a kid, my mom always made us like parse. Okay, who's done that before, okay? Where like they make you face the wall and then like you have to hold your hands up in the air for like whatever, 10 minutes, whatever it is. And oh my gosh, that's like really painful, right? Like, and then every time you're like, my mom was like, 10 more minutes. I'm like, no, that's actually pretty effective. Like, it's really painful to hold your hands up that long, right? But this is a matter of life or death. Because if he doesn't hold his hand up and pray, they're gonna lose. So what happens? Aaron and I think Moses' brother-in-law, they come, they bring him a rock to sit on, and they hold, like each person holds his hands up for him. And through that, the Israelites win the victory. And now what is the lesson for us here today? Like we face battles around us, right? But the greatest way to victory is what? Is through prayer. The greatest answer is in praying to God. But you can't pray alone. Often you have to pray with others because it's too hard to do by yourself. In this passage, we see that prayer is literally life or death for the Israelites. And that's the same thing for us spiritually. Prayer is literally life or death for you. When you face difficult things in your life, what is your response? Are you praying or not? That will show you if you're victorious or not. What's important to see is that Joshua still had to fight the battle. Moses prayed, but he still had to fight. So a lot of people are like, oh, I'm praying, but nothing's happening. Well, because sometimes God still tells you to go and do the things you're supposed to do. You're supposed to do both. But could Joshua win without the prayer? No. But could they have won the battle without him fighting? No. So both are important. So after the Israelites won their battle, we see in the next verse, Exodus 17, verse 15, it says this. Moses built an altar and called it, "The Lord is my banner." The Lord is my banner is another name for God. Have you seen those like old war movies? Like super old, like, like medieval, like European, whatever, like battles, like they all come out in their armor with their swords on horses. And what do you usually see? There's usually these like flags or banners waving in the air, right, with certain colors. And what that means is that, this army is fighting for this king. That banner in the air is saying, as long as this flag is flying, we are still winning. We are fighting for this king under this nation, and we're still winning. Once that flag went down, though, that meant that like group surrendered or they like lost the battle, whatever it was. But as long as that flag is flying, you're still winning. So the idea is this. Moses is saying, God is our victory. As long as that flag is still flying, as long as we are still living for God, trusting in God, seeking God, then we are still victorious. I want to close today by asking you this question. Are you facing a battle in your life right now? Okay, obviously, hopefully not a real battle in your life, but in your life, whether it's at home, with relationships, inside of yourself, or at work, or whatever it may be, are you facing a battle? Maybe it's an internal battle, it's inside. Maybe you're facing a problem and you find yourself complaining a lot more about it. Or maybe you're angry or upset at somebody, thinking that because of that person, your life is hard right now. But maybe, just maybe, God has allowed that to happen to show you the real problem is not that person. The real problem is not that issue. Maybe the real problem is that we don't trust in God. Do you trust that God is with you, even in the middle of the mess? Do you trust that God has your good in mind? He cares for you. Maybe it's an external battle outside of you. Maybe things are happening around you that you can't control. But maybe, just maybe, God is allowing that to happen to teach you how to put your trust into action. What action is that? It's prayer. The greatest victories of history have not been fought on the battlefield. The greatest victories in history have been fought on the ground, on the knees of people who love and seek God. That's the greatest place of victory. Can I have the praise team come up? No matter what you are going through right now, whether you're facing an internal battle or an external battle, this is what God has for us today. God himself is our greatest solution. Are you looking to find an answer to fight the battle for you? If you're looking for something or for someone or more money or a different job or, different friends or different image or whatever it may be, those things will only satisfy you temporarily. They will not fix the root problem. Who are you looking to as a solution? Your answer and my answer is found in God alone. God himself is our victory. He himself, if he's causing you to thirst, if he's causing, things to happen in your life, maybe he's showing you your hunger and your need for him. God himself is our greatest reward. God himself is our victory. Can we all stand together?